Hi, my name is Autumn. I'm 22 years old and I live in Georgia. The story that I'm going to share with you today is about the abuse I endured as a child. I grew up with a single mother. She tried to keep my dad out of my life as much as possible. I grew up with an older sister and we didn't get along growing up as kids either. We fought all the time. We argued all the time. Me and my mom didn't get along either. I feel like she punished me for what my father did, and she did a lot of unforgivable things. My mom didn't know that my father was into hardcore drugs until she gotten pregnant with me, and he tried to force my mom to do drugs while she was pregnant with me. My mom and my father were never together, like married or in a relationship. He was a friend of hers and they met in Los Angeles. I think that my dad had a lot of mental issues growing up. He dealt with abuse and he didn't know what was right from wrong at all. So he introduced his abuse to me and my sister and carried out the legacy of that. He is schizophrenic and he was clinically diagnosed as being schizophrenic and having bipolar disorder. So when he was younger, he was raped and molested by my grandparents. And he grew up in Alabama and he went through a tremendous amount of abuse, which I think played a big role into what he taught me and my sister and did to me and my sister. There was a lot of incest in my family and they didn't know that it was wrong. Growing up, I thought that my father looking at me in that way was normal. I thought it was a form of love, that it meant that he loved me and that I mattered. My abuse started, as far as I can remember, at the age of 4. My first memory that I've ever had around that age was my dad forcing me to do things to him. And he would tell me that if I didn't do it, I didn't love my mom, I didn't love him, and he would bribe me with candy. He told me that this is what fathers do and that I had to make sure that he was happy. When I thought he meant happy, I thought he just meant just grateful. I thought that if I did that he would love me forever, like a father should love his daughter. But I didn't know that that wasn't the type of love that normal fathers give their children. I think that now looking back at it, even being 4 years old, I should have saw my surroundings and known that I don't think their father does that. But I wanted him to care about me. He never hung out with me unless he wanted that. He did abuse me, like not just sexual. When he was angry at my mom, he would hit me or my sister. He would come up to me and he would sit me on his lap and he would tell me that my mom made him angry and he would want me to give him head. And I remember one day I was in the bedroom trying to go to sleep and he came in my room and forced me to do things to him again. That was the first time he ever did things to me, and he put his tongue in my private parts and he told me that and asked me if it felt nice. And I remember saying that I was in pain and I had to use the restroom. And I kept saying that I had to use the restroom so that I didn't have to deal with it. He let me use the restroom, but I think he noticed that I kept asking to go. So I think he knew that I was not enjoying myself. Obviously, I'm a kid. And he told me that if I didn't tell my mom, I would get candy. And I was happy because I love candy. So I was like, okay. And one day, I was in my cousin's room and there were bunk beds and I was giving him head because he asked for it. And my mom tried to come in the room, and I hid behind the bunk beds with a watermelon Jolly Rancher in my mouth, and I did not say anything. Between the ages of 4 and 6, he came in my room at least 3 or 4 times a week, almost 2 or 3 times a day, and each time it got worse. So it went from oral and me doing things to him and him doing things to me, to him putting his finger in my private areas. I never even knew that he did that to my sister, or I didn't have a memory remembering that it happened to her. And now that I think about it, it's probably because he took us individually. I don't remember ever being in a room with my sister doing those things. So he had to feel some disgust within himself for we were separated in a different room whenever these type of things happen. Or maybe I just do not remember. I feel like I was his favorite because I was his daughter. Me and my sister have separate dads. Her dad passed away with kidney failure when she was 2 years old. So I think that he had started with her and went to me. But because I don't have that ability to know if when being an infant, or I wouldn't know if he did that to me, but I wouldn't put it past me, truthfully. I think that he favoritized me a lot because I was his blood. And my family on that side have really horrible past. So I wouldn't put it past me at all. I remember going to a friend's house. I think my sister had spoken about it to her friend and it alarmed her. But I remember going to school the next day, and I was, I believe, in 1st grade. So that would have made me, I think, 6 or 7. And I remember having to watch these videos at school about what to be aware of, and the sexual abuse with adults videos that we had to be cautious and careful. And I told my teacher that my dad does those things to me. So the FBI came to my school within the next few days and interrogated me. I think in 1st grade, either 1st or 2nd grade, and I was pulled out of class by 2 men in suits. And at that point in my life, my dad was absent. I think he could have been in jail. I just remember having a brief couple of months where he was not there. Best months of my life, truthfully. And they pulled out a picture of my father, and it was a very old, vintage looking picture of when he was younger. And they asked me if that was my dad, and I said, yeah, it's my dad. And they asked me about what he did to me, and I remember telling them a lot. They gave me a bear and told me to go into details about what my dad did, and I did. I went into a lot of details, and guess he was gone after that. But I was a good kid academically, I could say. I was a very smart child academically. I loved school. It was my escape from my mom, and my mom became really ill. And with that anger, she took it out on me, not my sister. I felt like she did it because I was white. I was mixed, and my dad was the worst person in the world to her. He harmed her, the only thing left of her husband, who passed away, which is my sister. I felt like that was her mindset, that she didn't love me. I felt like she loved my sister more because my sister was daughter. So, which I can understand because he's gone, but that left me to darkness. It left me to the dirt, and I had to raise myself. When we moved from Los Angeles to San Diego, my mom met and he was supposed to be our new father figure. I didn't know what her illness was or what she was going through because I was still young, but I know she just wanted to move me away from Los Angeles as soon as possible. And when we moved there, that's when the abuse started. It was one Halloween, and me and my sister did this thing for Halloween where we would trade our candy or play candy Monopoly. It was fun. And I was looking for my sister to play that game with me, and she was on the porch and she was bent over and he was touching her. And in my mind, I'm like, I know I was taught that my dad doing this was wrong, but what do I do now? He is 6 foot, like 4, very strong. He's not the size of my dad at all. I didn't know what to do. And in my mind, I'm like, it's gonna restart again. It's gonna happen again, and I'm gonna be too scared to go to my mom because she's gonna blame me for everything. So he told me to be quiet. My sister was like, please be quiet. Don't say anything. And I think it's because my sister wanted to be loved or wanted to heal, but she didn't heal in the proper way. And I feel like he made us feel like he was our dad. He bought us presents for Christmas. We never had Christmas. We never had that lifestyle where we got what we wanted. So it was kind of like a hush. Like, you could get this and this and this if you do this for me. And we were okay because at that point we were already used to it. So we were like, okay, like, sure. And it happened to my sister more than it did me. But he took my virginity, and I remember I was on the floor under my bed. Like, I had a big space, huge space under my bed, so I could just go under there and just chill. And he was on top of me, and he told me that it was going to burn and sting, and I kept saying to stop because it hurt. He was like, no, it's gonna go away, it's not gonna hurt anymore. And it hurt really bad. It hurt so bad, and I kind of just, like, I got so numb and angry with the world. So I hated my mom. I started to hate her, and I started to show her how much I hated her. And finally, he stopped around being, I think I was 12 when he finally stopped, like, doing stuff to me because he realized that I was someone he was threatened by. I became extremely violent with weapons, knives, and guns, and at this time I was hanging around a lot of gang members. So I feel like I was raising myself to be someone that everybody feared. With my mom, when I was 12, my mother had sat me down and told me she had AIDS. She had contracted AIDS in 2004 after I was born. So I think I tried to give her excuses of why she was always angry and abusive towards me. And I thought that getting closer to my mom would mean she would stop hitting me. But around 2011, I was 10, it started to get a lot worse. Like, her abuse became, not the belt, you're throwing an iron skillet at me, and you're beating me for dropping a glass plate, and you're telling me I can't eat, like, a lot. You're calling me and pulling my hair out. All these things. When I turned 13, I was a complete defiant child. I was being bullied in middle school for my weight. I used food as a cope to help me heal through all of my abuse. And I loved food. I loved it. And people called me and big. And now that I think about it, at that time, I wasn't even that big. I was a good weight. But I guess in that era, everybody thought that being 180 pounds was the worst thing in the world. They made me feel that way. So one day, I got into a fight at school because a girl called me and I beat her horribly for it. And I was suspended from school. And when I got home, my mom beat nearly to death. She punched me in my face. She pulled me by my hair. She grabbed the belt and beat me with the belt, but that wasn't enough. I spit on her after it, and she would just pull my hair and hit me. And I wasn't allowed to go outside, hang out with my friends. I had to sneak out to go outside because I was locked in my room all the time. I was not allowed to hang out with anyone. I had a girlfriend. My mom did not like that I was gay. She said it was against God's rules or something like that. She despised of her, and she called me the devil. She called me amongst a lot of other things. November 24th, she hit me in my eye, and she bit me really bad in my arm, where it opened my skin, and it left a very dark mark on my arm. So I ran to my girlfriend's house, which was around the corner, and I stayed there for the whole day. And I told my girlfriend's mom that I was dealing with this, and she told me not to go back there. My mom made it seem like I was horrible kid, to people. She was in contact with the San Diego Police Department about me and made it seem like I was the most defiant kid. So leading to what I did to her, she was in contact with a police officer and would tell him I was defiant, and I didn't listen ever. I went back home November 25th. When I went home, by this time me and my sister get along. She's my best friend. She's everything to me. She's had my niece, and I thought it changed my whole world. I tried the yes ma'am, no ma'am with my mom. It didn't work. She didn't care. I tried everything. I tried loving her. I tried caring for her. Wanted her to love me. I wanted her to love me like she loved my sister. And I tried. So that day, November 25th, I went in her room and she was mad at me for running away. And I told her it was her fault. I said, it's your fault that I'm like this. Where were you when I was raped and touched? Where were you? You were never here. I was 13. I spent 13 years being raped, abused by everyone, all your men, and you were never there. And so I remember telling her I wish she would just die and get out of my life and leave me alone. And she got up and she was gonna hit me. I was so scared. I was so scared. I was tired. I didn't want to be hit anymore. I was 13. I'm a preteen, or a teenager. Why are you hitting me still? So I ran in the kitchen and I grabbed a knife and I said, if you hit me, I will stab you and I will hurt you back. And she caught me and she runs towards me, and I had cut her arm. And then I ran outside to where my sister was, and I told her, I'm like, I just hurt mom. She tried to hit me, and my sister's confused and not understanding what's going on. And it was 20 minutes later, I'm apologizing. I'm saying I'm sorry, and that I love you, and that I didn't mean to. And she just looked at me like she hated me. And so she called the police on me. And I wanted to run. And now in my mind, I hate myself because I hurt her. Even though she hurted me my whole life, I hurt her. And she was on the phone with the police, and I'm like, I'm gonna get in trouble. And I got arrested at 13, and I was sent to Kearney Mesa, and they had me in juvenile hall for a long time. And I was lonely, and it was horrible. I was the youngest there, and I got bullied there too. And They treated me like garbage. Like, I felt like obviously a prisoner. Like, I was told when to use the restroom and when to eat and when to go to school. I got into fights. I was just on a complete like warpath at that point, and that's when I was diagnosed with bipolar depression and PTSD. And I never even knew what mental issues were until I went there, and my psychiatrist told me that I did an assessment, and they said I had ADHD, PTSD, depression, bipolar depression, and the list goes on from there. And they put me on meds that they said would help me, which did temporarily. I called my mom all the time. I called my mom and she would not answer. I'd beg to have another call, and I would call my uncle, the love of my life, my uncle, and he would pick up and tell me like how my mom spoke poorly of me and on his brother. So he was not really my uncle, but he was the only thing that loved me, in my opinions, in my life. Now my sister, obviously, and he would tell me like, just keep up, pray about it, and you'll be okay. And I'm like, no, God doesn't love me. He put me here and he did this to me. He let me get raped and he let me get hurt, and he never was there for me. One day comes my court date, and I spent all the holidays in juvenile hall. I spent my birthday, my 14th birthday. All I got was a bag of popcorn for my birthday. My mom got a visit with me before we went into court. And she was like, I want you home. I miss you. I'm like, okay, I miss you too. I will never do what I did ever again. I will listen. I will be a perfect child for you. And that I love you. And I thought I was going to go home. I thought I was ready to go home and they were going to send me home. But behind my back, she went to my attorney and was like, I'm scared of her. I fear her. She's not safe for me. She's not safe for her sister or the kid. And she was like, I want her here. So I spent 2 more months in juvenile hall waiting for placement for foster care before my sister got to be free and live. I hated her so much because like, why would you give me a home at all? You had no intention on letting me come home. You pretty much saying you didn't want me anymore. And I waited and watched everybody go home or go wherever they were going, and I finally went to a group home because no foster parent wanted to foster a 14-year-old defiant kid coming from juvenile hall. I spent 2 years in that group home. I started doing drugs because of it. I was so alone and I was on probation. My probation officer she wasn't there a lot. So I've probably seen my probation officer like 2 times within that 2 years. She never really drug tested me, but I was on hardcore drugs. And I'm a 14-year-old, 14 through 16 on drugs. And I became a monster. Like, that's how I would describe 14 through 18 me. I overdosed in the group home, in the bathroom. What they do is they buy you all these gifts and try to make up for you not having family. But it didn't make up for me not being able to see the growth of my niece, only being able to visit a couple of times. I went back with my mom 2017 and everything was fine. We had went through our therapy. We were in a Fred Finch program that helps families cope and reunite and talk out problems. And everything was fine until she abandoned me and moved to Los Angeles again when I was 17. So that was 2018, and after my birthday she left. She knew I couldn't come with her because my dad lived there. He was out of jail. He had more kids, and I was terrified of him. I was scared of men. I didn't want to be found by him, and he always found me. I didn't want to be found by him or near him. I wouldn't know what I would do. Then I told her that, and she left. And lived her life like she didn't have a kid left in this like world. I used to paint. That's the positive thing that I did to help me cope. All the other ones are negative. But I painted a lot. I loved art. I loved music. Music was beautiful. I never wrote music or was a singer, but I loved any type of art, like poetry. My uncle was like a prayer warrior, so he loved like praying and stuff, and he was always there for me too. I think that now being 22 years old, almost 23, I handle things a lot differently. I handle the world and the problems with the world a lot differently. I'm less angry as an adult. Like after I turned 18, I was still kind of reckless, but once I hit 19, I was a little bit more independent. I got my own place and I mended my life with my mom. That's where I started first. I forgave my mom, and our relationship now is something you would not expect. Like, I absolutely adore my mother. I get scared if she doesn't call me back. Like, I forgave her. There are times where I get mad and I stop and think, like, this is what she did to me, but then, like, I love her. That's my mom. My dad, I forgave my dad, but I told him his karma would be me praying for him. And it's always been his karma. I prayed for him, and I prayed that God would handle it for me. And he did. He's dealing with whatever karma he has now. So I would give advice to whoever is going through abuse to just speak up. If you're going through any type of abuse, like even in relationships or any abuse, to let somebody know, because you don't want it to get as bad as it got. Like, you don't want to be a victim your whole life. It's not fun. So that's pretty much all.